Thank you. Thank you for joining. Hopefully, a quick, brief lunch, but I have the incredible pleasure of having a fireside chat with Andy. Andy is the Chief Data Analytics Officer of AT&T. Before that, incredible history building business teams that use data and science and technology at time, and his fingerprints are all over the industry. So I'm super pumped. The last time we both sat down was in H2O World, Bangalore, where we open sourced our first GenAI offering, the GPT.H2O.ai that you saw today in LLM Studio. Now it's a great honor to have him here. And since he made all the way trip to meet us in India and meet our customers, we are here in his hometown.
Thanks for having me, Sri. Now, it was a great event in Bangalore. 500 people? And the room was packed, and the energy, the enthusiasm was off the chart. I mean, it was a really great event. Good to be here.
Thank you. I think to just kick off, to give an idea, I mean, I think we demoed a lot this morning, the banks using us. AT&T has been a customer for us from 2015, thousands of models in production, billions of dollars in value. And kudos and the credit goes to Andy on building an incredible culture. I want to touch on that a bit because we have a room full of audience that's model risk validators, model risk chief modeling officers who are used to being almost the safeguards for the banks on deploying AI or machine learning. How should they think about their role in the incredible proliferation that GenAI is seeing in their organizations?
Really good question. So it's great to be here with the banking audience. I actually started my career building credit scoring models. So, tied back to this industry, it's really special. It's kind of amazing where we are with generative AI. It's amazing the democratization. They build, like, our vision at AT&T, right, is to democratize AI to really have it be part of the fabric of what we do, the fabric of how we operate the company. Because, I mean, we are a large company. You guys are part of large companies too. To really become efficient, to really change the culture. You mentioned the culture. To change the way we operate, to change the way we deliver value to our customers, value to our stakeholders, value to our shareholders, we have to embrace AI. And that's the journey that we're on. And so we talk about how we democratize it. It's not going to happen if it's just one team doing it. It's going to happen if every team across our company is fluent in creating an analytical way to solve their business problem. And that's the path that we're on. How do we do it in a way that's safe and secure? I mean, that's kind of fundamental to what we do, right? We kind of do it, like, we all know the word or the terms like privacy by design, right? Compliance by design. That's how we build our AI, right? With the ability to monitor, the ability to evaluate its performance, at the baseline, right? So that's how we build it. We build products around it, and those products, are just integrated into the process. And we're in this, world of generative AI. One of the things we're working on right now, we call it, I know we've talked about this, like an ops GPT, like a set of agents that actually work with us, to work with our AI solutions to basically monitor those, to ensure that they're operating as they're supposed to, right? And to alert people are always in the loop if something gets out of whack. So, I mean, we're looking at it. I mean, it's kind of part of our policy. It's part of the process that we do. It's all by design, but we're leveraging automation to do as much as possible.
In terms of the promise of AI and Gen AI, I think you've kind of, I was almost tempted to play a clip from the last event where you kind of mentioned the value from AI. Maybe you can touch it for the audience here live. And then you're thinking about how Gen AI is being rolled out so fast. Maybe is the promise of Gen AI bringing value? Are you seeing that value? And maybe some anecdotes on that could be interesting for the audience.
It's a good question. No, it's like we always say, like, you know, we're not in this, and I know you guys aren't in this as a science project or as, you know, something that's cool and fun, the next shiny object. We're here to deliver value to the company, and you know that's always been, you know, our philosophy, you know, with traditional AI, with traditional analytics, and it's, you know, even more so with generative AI. Because we've run so fast in the last 12 months, I think we have a first mover advantage in a lot of things that we're doing. And the value that we're delivering to the company is significant. You know, we report earnings tomorrow. I can't really go into dollars, but let me just say that what we're doing from a generative AI perspective, it's meaningful at the scale of AT&T. You know, and it's not just in one area. It's in, you know, that's the beauty of generative AI, is that it's so, you know, set to be democratized, right? To be democratized, to be used by so many areas of the company, so many areas of all of our companies, areas that really were a bit, you know, foreign to AI. You know, when we think about how we're using it at AT&T, I mean, it's HR, it's finance, it's sales, it's, you know, it's not just the traditional operations, the traditional marketing, the traditional, you know, risk evaluation. It's everywhere. So you talk about the value. Let me just quickly tell you how we did this at AT&T, because I think this is interesting. I run the data and AI, you know, group for AT&T, but we're here democratizing this to our company and to, you know, to people who obviously have a vested interest in how they run their business. The way we thought the best way to approach it was to bring in almost an outside entity to help run it with us. So it didn't sound like a bunch of data and AI people cramming ideas down people's throats. We did it collectively as a partnership. And so we actually have a generative AI program office. That program office is there to be an impartial, you know, party to work with us, but also to work with the business, to hear the business case from the business, work with finance, put a business case around it, bring us in to evaluate the architecture, to evaluate the possibility of doing it on time and delivering the benefit on time, and then to do the execution. And then they work with their finance partners to actually impact the budget on the upcoming year. So it's a collective use, right? It's a collective partnership. It's us, it's business, and this independent group that's helping to realize this value with us.
That's amazing. Democratization of AI inside AT&T across all the businesses and across all the problems that are coming at the business every day, essentially. How does AT&T and how do you think about regulation in LLMs, regulation and safety of LLMs and safety of generative AI? What is the kind of current thought process or state of the art that you are seeing? You obviously work with every one of our players in the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely top of mind. You know, responsible AI, always a core, you know, component of what AT&T believes in and what we commit to, right? We took our core, you know, operating guidelines on AI and we evolved those with generative AI into a company policy that, you know, is bound to our employee code of conduct. And so not only do we believe it, but we live it. Our employees are bound by it. And, you know, it's just essential. So as we, you know, create the architecture, everything goes through a process where, again, as we created that environment, we have our compliance team, we have our privacy team, we have our legal team, we have our security team on board with us in this journey. And so as we bring a new LLM into the into the process, it goes through that entire evaluation. As we do a use case, it goes through that entire evaluation. But it's not a bureaucratic nightmare. I can just tell you, we've worked with these teams to move fast. It's like it's an incredible story to talk about, this at the scale of AT&T, a company that, quite frankly, has not always been known for moving so fast in this area with coordination from these groups. So, we, again, put automation in place to ensure things are we have the right checks and balances there. But, everything that we do has the visibility across all those risk organizations.
Awesome. How is it more software? It's also, you're saying, process. What are the various elements that have been rolled out to kind of assist? I know of the Watchtower, for example, which is it reacts almost instantly as the model drifts. But ideas like that the audience could pick, best practices.
So I'll just talk about, everybody has their own version of what they would call it. We call, our generative AI architecture at AT&T, it's a very creative name, Ask AT&T. So Ask AT&T for us is the environment where we roll out generative AI. It's the environment that allows us to have model interoperability, right? It's not just an OpenAI, it's not just a Google, it's not just an open source solution. It's all of those. Working with you guys, Sri, right? Obviously H2O is a huge partner, and so your models are in the ecosystem too. We ensure that we're running in an environment where our IP can be controlled, where we understand that as we basically share our most sensitive knowledge, in this environment, that we understand, how it's traversing through the system, and that we control that IP. We do it where we have processes in place, again, working with you guys, but working with others across, the industry to minimize hallucination, right? To ensure that we have the processes in place so that we understand what hallucination is and that we minimize it based on the use cases. Some use cases we might want more, right? But we have that tolerance level that we can dial up and down. And then most importantly, that we have role-based access controls. So as information comes in for one part of the company, say supply chain, the supply chain team has access to it. But another part of the company, maybe HR, we have other use cases there, but everybody in the company don't see the supply chain data as the supply chain team does. So role-based access control is super, super important. And then the monitoring systems on top of it. Yes, Watchtower is key. This process I just talked about called OpsGPT is becoming very integral, which takes the input from things like, Watchtower, but basically using agents will actually help us control and monitor all of these systems.
Agents, we demoed a small bit of agents this morning, how LLMs are not good at everything, but they're not good at calculating, but they can call a calculator, right? So there's a few bit of similarly calling the ops. If ops is the portal to calling other agents and integrating with the rest of the ecosystem, I think that's a great.
I'll tell you, kind of a light went on with agents 2 weeks ago. Like we all, the promise of agents is incredible. But thinking about the role of an agent and having that role be defined and understanding that a role of one agent, may need to be separate and not interfered by the role of other agents. And I'll give you a great example. So obviously coding applications is a huge, application for generative AI at AT&T, basically reimagining the entire software development lifecycle. I mean, everything from the user story, the testing, the code creation, the vulnerability checking, all of that, in an automated way. But the thought occurred to me, right? We need a controller. Everything that we do, right? Everything that you guys do, you have SOX obligations, right? So we need an agent, and that agent in this LLM workspace, that its sole responsibility is to create SOX controls, right? And it can't be influenced by the other agents because it should be pure at heart, right? Or pure in intent on its ability to both create and test those controls. So yeah, spot on.
Brilliant. I think we are thinking the rate at which APIs are language, right? So then generative AI is so good at learning language, it's able to understand APIs and program other programs, if you will. And one of the things that came up in that conversation within the team as they're building was, what if we build APIs that are easy to program by GPT? Right now, we're writing APIs to program by humans and documenting them for humans, programmers, regular programmers. But what if we start reinventing APIs to be easily discoverable by GPT-4 or GPT-5 coming along, or even other Llama 2s? But also then changing the design patterns of APIs to be much more simpler, so there's less error introduced by automatically putting content.
Yeah.
How you have a very kind of a bird's eye view of all the changes coming in the industry. What is particularly catching your eye on how AI can transform the world for good?
It's a great question. I mean, let me kind of go around the horn for that. But AI for good is a really big part, because sustainability, is a core part of AT&T's charter. But the evolution of this is really incredible. So not just text-based LLMs, but obviously, you guys are all here talking about image as well. But the combination of text and image, the multimodal component of this, just unlocks so many use cases for everybody here. I think there's value there in AI for good. A lot of safety applications, that can be created that we haven't thought of before, especially at a company like AT&T. AI for good, I go back to one of the core use cases we have, right? We have one of the largest vehicle fleets in the country. We have 50,000 vehicles, using AI to optimize those routes so that we serve our customers in the best way possible, but we drive the fewest miles possible, is a core thing that we're always chasing. Generative AI helps with that, along with traditional AI. But by reducing those miles, or those miles driven, we have a really big impact on our carbon footprint. So that's a really big area. I'll tell you a social good area, and that's robocalling. Everybody is a mobile customer, either of AT&T or one of our competitors. Robocalling, spam calling, it's a concern for everybody. Like, we have a lot of AI that's really, come into play to prevent and screen out the robocalling. I will tell you, when I started at AT&T a couple years ago, if we looked at our survey of our customers and their biggest complaints, robocalling was one of the top 2 or 3. Now it's not on the list, because we're using AI and generative AI to suppress those. It still, gets through a bit, but nothing like it did in the past. So, 2 examples.
Thank you. Well, customer complaints have been a topic today. We showed a demo of one of our upcoming products, complaint summarizers. I think in the realm of audio, are there interesting applications that you're seeing, because voice is such a integral part for AT&T, and there's probably a potential for leadership pole position, even if you so choose, right? Sort of kind of thoughts around audio LLMs would be interesting.
Yeah, audio is super key. Obviously, AT&T, really large consumer base, and a large employee base. So how we serve, our customers, how we serve our employees is paramount. We've made incredible strides there, but it's not always a text-based experience. So an audio-based experience where near real time, where we have great results, is super important for us. I will say in the chat space, we've all experienced the classic machine computer chat, and it's not pleasant, right? You want to slam your head against the wall and hit 0 as many times as you can to get out of it. With generative AI, what we see in that experience, it's so encouraging, because what we see, and it's in production at AT&T, we see an experience that's much more human-like. We see an experience where the customer gets what they want, they get what they want faster, and often they're now ending the chat with a thank you. Okay, that never happens in classic NLP. But if we can take that same experience that we have in a text conversation and make it, more of an audio-driven conversation, that's the holy grail for us.
What is it? I heard more than 50% reduction in repeat calls, or
The call shed, more than 50% reduction over the existing process in place, which was AI-driven, so it wasn't greenfield.
You have been AI driven for a very long time, since we've known. No, I think that's very encouraging, because many of the folks are in the cusp of or deploying a contact center application or an application to improve customer experiences.
And Sri, I'll tell you, like we always think about it being, on the front of the customer, interaction, and that's really important. But like we've seen so much progress in just helping to surface the information for our care, support agents in a more timely way. Like no matter which care operation you work in, they're always the care folks have to work through so many systems, so many screens. Generative AI has the ability to pull that together to a seamless experience so that their job's easier. They can serve your customers better. They're in most cases, they're great at what they do. If we make them more enabled to do their job, the satisfaction goes through the roof.
Let me ask a very common experience I've seen in the last year, just last year. We've been in AI for a good part of a decade, and we'll be talking about the use of how AI can help, how AI can do this, how machine learning can do this. And the last year specifically, the CEOs and the boards have been on the reverse. They've been pulling many people in the audience have experienced that, every one of them, how can I deploy Gen AI? How can I deploy AI across different dimensions? How have you prioritized or even templatized? Maybe you have seen that much earlier than some of us. So maybe you can, what are the typical ways of which use case to start with or not to use? How do you prioritize them versus how do you also educate back the board on progress?
Yeah, good question. So, I've kind of heard, a way to talk about generative AI, and I've heard it several times. It's the automation of intelligence, and we think about that concept, and you think about the ability to do that and the impact of change on the organization. It's really immense, and I think that's what gets the CEO, the board level attention, right? Is that, well, now we have the ability to really automate intelligence, and that can apply to any area of the business. With us, I will say, we have high-level executive level visibility. They want constant readouts, not only what changes, but again, it's not just a technology journey, but what value we're driving. And that's where I go back to this setup that we created, which was to have an independent group, work with the business on the use case, have finance do a deep dive on that use case and actually vet the value. And now there's no, there's no confusion on the value of doing that work. It's all out there. It's transparent. We're all aligning on it. We can prioritize that across the company so that we're working on the most important things first and not just pet projects, right? So let the value of the project drive the resource, drive the development, drive the effort, do it in conjunction with the finance team, with visibility to the C-suite office, and buy-in from the business. So at AT&T, in this process that we've created, I mean, we're all limited on capital and just expense that we can, divert towards these projects. It is very important. I mean, we always say with AI, we should have at least a 3x return on everything we do. With generative AI, our margin is now 5x. That's the minimum level of return. But we still are capped at dollars that are available. But, what we're trying to do, and what I think we're executing right now, is we've actually evangelized this across the employee base. Like, this is the art of the possible. These are the things that you can do if you lean into it, and it will make your job better, make your area of the company better. And so by doing that, to get information or ideas to this program office, we drummed up over 500 ideas that were organic from the business. You know, some of them we seeded. Some of them we said, this is a good idea, you should submit this. But many of these, the business came up with themselves. So I think that shows like the transformative nature of this, is the business is coming up with the ideas. The business is submitting the ideas. And then we have, you know, the finance teams in the process to vet it, to assign the value. And the other thing that we saw in this process, and this is great, and I think maybe you guys are seeing it too, is that so many of these use cases follow a pattern, and that we're not going to develop 500, you know, unique, bespoke snowflake solutions. We're going to develop, you know, about 6 or 7 different core product features, you know, some with the help of you guys at H2O. And those 6 or 7 product features, if you take them on their, you know, on their own and combine them with others, you basically create the patterns that support most of those 500 use cases. So it's not, it's another unlock, right? Because, you know, traditional AI, you know, it's very specific AI, right? You're gathering your training data, building your model. Now you've solved an application, but the next use case, you're doing it again, rinse and repeat. Now we have a very general solution that if you attack the patterns, you solve so many use cases.
We found that with the document diff, for example. One use case, you see it everywhere. So it's absolutely quite. I mean, very thoughtful, thoughtful enunciation of that template you've come up with. What are as you think of, and I know it's the day before the earnings call, so you can't really say a lot. But as you think of the next, this 2024 has unleashed so much energy in AI. At the same time, the bottom, I would say, other than the top 7 companies in S&P 500, everybody is under strict control, in a regime of still capital crunch, if you will. As you think of the year ahead, how are you thinking about both investments into AI, GenAI, but also what are kind of the top goals, like for the company? Like some of my customers have 10% of our employee base should be AI literate, or AI makers even. What kind of goals should someone think of when they're running a large organization like yours for AI?
Yeah, no, good question, Sri. I mean, with us, everything starts with free cash flow. As a company, AT&T, you know, has a commitment to the street to deliver, you know, a free cash flow level that's very important in the telecom industry. And so every one of our use cases is really focused on how do we deliver more free cash flow to the street. I mean, that's the driver. Now, as a byproduct of that, you know, it's all about ensuring that each part, that we sprinkle, you know, the knowledge of this in each part of the business, and you get the flywheel effect, right? You know, even before generative AI, working with you guys, and like we co-partner on the Future Store, you know, AI as a service, the ability to democratize AI, the ability for, you know, a non-data scientist to execute AI, to be an AI maker, has been a fundamental goal of ours. Generative AI just made it easier, right? Because we still need all the traditional AI. We're just using generative AI, you know, hey, the English language is the new, you know, computer language. It's the new AI language, right? We're just calling all of these, you know, services through APIs that are always very important. So now we just need to make sure that that's democratized through each part of the business. We focus on things that matter to AT&T. The things that matter to AT&T are things that drive free cash flow. I think that's the mentality that we have. And that changes the game. Like, I mean, you know, we've all been at companies before when we've worked on pet projects or science projects, like just for the sake of doing. But when you focus on that metric that matters to your company, free cash flow, that is that metric that matters to AT&T, you know, it unlocks everything. It empowers you. It almost unlocks the handcuffs, right? We're no longer talking amongst departments on what should we work on. Well, we should work on the project that delivers the highest free cash flow return. So it becomes empowering.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's actually, free cash flow is so crucial for a startup like us as well, because we think about building sustainable business. Some of our customers are doing executive leadership training in the coming month, and the workshop exercise we're doing is actually related to how to generate the maximum free cash flow. Given it's kind of interesting that aligns with what you've done. Question for maybe from the audience. It's probably a good time to get a couple of questions in from the audience, if there's any.
Yep. Thank you, Sri, and thank you for a great fireside chat here. We do have a couple of questions. One, as an organization that is evaluating incorporating generative AI into their stack, what would you suggest as a way to avoid common pitfalls in developing your Gen AI strategy?
So you want to start?
Okay. Start with.
So with us, I think it all starts with setting the architecture, right? You have to be very deliberate and very prescriptive about the architecture that you're comfortable with. For us, it was interoperability, right? Because we know things change every day, right? With the performance of commercial language models. So interoperability was key. For us, it was we had to have the ability to have the right controls in place on both the use cases and access to data. So ensuring that access controls were in place and the security team was brought in early. And I think along with the security team, I will tell you, talking to my counterparts, both, outside, our industry for sure, one of the biggest hurdles people have is getting the legal and the compliance and privacy teams on board. And I would say do that early. That's super important. And by us doing that, what we had were true pilot, partners. Like they were co-pilots, to use a Gen AI word, but they were there with us instead of a gate at the last end of delivering. And then evangelizing with the business, showing the art of the possible is super important. One thing we see when we go into a part of the business and we ask, what do you think you could do with generative AI? You kind of get crickets, right? Just a blank kind of stares. But when you talk about, here's what everybody else is doing, the lights start going off because there's not too many degrees from that. Here's what everybody else is doing. From here's how I could use that in my business. So I think evangelizing is a really, really a big part of it.
Basically, entrepreneurial thinking. Entrepreneurship is much harder than entrepreneurship, right? I always empathize with change makers in large organizations. Change makers like us who dream of things and they happen. We have a lot of the world rooting for us, right? And when you're bringing change in large organization, it's actually more not just friction. People are waiting for the first person to fail so that they can actually celebrate, right? So I usually use the joke that it's only half a joke probably. The person who invented fire first probably was burnt alive, and the second person who watched him built the kingdom. So I think in some sense, a lot of you are suffering those kind of inertia, if you will. I think if cross-pollinating, even cross-industry pollinating, and that's why we are so fortunate to have you here, to kind of see what did work, what friction you faced, and that change stories don't get told as much because if they are told, they're not reflected. I think that's something that we tend to create in some of our customer councils, so they can watch how a healthcare, Samir is in the front row, so customer 3 times in a row from Bon Secours and Hackensack Meridian and McKinsey. And he's basically here to watch how banks are doing validation or how AT&T is transformed. I think that cross-company, cross-industry storytelling, sharing stories, war stories, that's going to be quite useful. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. In Commonwealth Bank, the procurement team became a customer, which you have not anticipated that in a long time, right? Or then the legal officers who then work with the procurement team are suddenly saying, I don't want to answer all those questions. Can I put a Gen AI bot in front of it so I can answer the important ones, the meaty ones? So the folks who were resistant in the past became the proponents, and then that became getting to that water cooler of the organization, which usually are the operations side, it gets the word out that there's success happening.
Yeah, spot on. And one other, thing just popped in my mind. Two others. One, you have to have a team that really is nimble, because the rate of change. I'm speaking, preaching to the choir here. Everybody knows that the rate of change is crazy. To say, this is my development plan for 6 months, and keeping to that development plan is, futile in the space, because it's changing so fast. You have to create this architecture that is nimble, but yet stick to your plan. The other thing that's been really helpful for us is, to kind of get out of the echo chamber, right? To not just listen to what we want to hear and what we want to, do for AT&T, but, we have had the chance to sit down with Sam Altman. We have had the chance to sit down with Sri, with Jensen at NVIDIA, with the DeepMind team at Google, right? To really pressure test what's the art of the possible, and what can we do if we move fast. And that's been really empowering, I think, to us, is that, it is a new dynamic. There are things that we can do with generative AI that we have not been able to do in the past. Regardless of technology. It is a step function change in a lot of different ways. Not in everything, but in some things. And embracing that change has really been, a driver for AT&T.
Change is the new constant.
Yeah.
And I think for Gen AI specifically, the rate at which it's changing is just incredible. So, and it's open source has helped a lot, spur a lot of change, a lot of competition in a positive way. For your own personal life, how has Gen AI helped you or changed things that you do on your day-to-day basis? I want to, probably don't have a lot of time, so I want to also offer incredible gratitude. First, I think we were presenting in a corner here on a MLConf. I think Josephine was there, and in the audience was AT&T. And then Alpharetta team of AT&T became even though the team from Plano was using us earlier, it's Alpharetta team that called us and said, we need to build a partnership right away. So I think it's almost poetic to be here almost 7-8 years after, but thank you for your support and partnership. But I want to have you leave with the question, how are you using in personal life, how it has changed?
Thank you for the partnership. It's really been incredible. And again, even before generative AI, right? Like the working with you guys on, on just improving our core model development process, with your products, the work we did, working together on the feature store was really, really important for us. So how it changed my life, I think I work 80 hours, a week now, but I'm more productive.
Okay.
Is that your experience as well? Has it doubled the number of hours you can put in?
Certainly helped a lot. Yes, you have to use technology for your advantage. Right? Everybody's using it.
I think coding has gotten faster, obviously. Has strategy gotten better with generative AI? Have you used it?
Yeah, I think it's incredible for strategy. If you use it correctly, it can help you think through parts of the strategy that you couldn't pressure test before. Again, to help you kind of get out of that echo chamber. I will tell you, a use case we have at AT&T is to help our lawyers with their oral arguments. Right? Just to, again, it's not going to deliver them, but just to help them, shape and scope, what the important parts should be. So I think it's very important on a strategy perspective.
I think the rise of strategy science, right? Sort of data scientists, once things get automated, will bring scientific thinking to changing the world at a strategic level. And I think I am incredibly fortunate to be on a panel or hosting you a couple of times, thrice now, or once at AT&T in Dallas. I see the strategic scientists right next to me, and every time we meet, we just learn a little bit more about how it all started. So so thank you very much for that. And also, we are a customer. So the feature store that Andy was talking about, I remember distinctly the team, Mark and Prince, and who were working on it. They were challenged by a software house that, why are you building software? Feature store should be built by software companies. And then we had to create a couple of slides for Mark saying C was invented in AT&T, R was information theory was invented in AT&T, and Bell Labs, and we have a few. We have a Bell Labs person in the audience, Vijay.
It was a different AT&T.
Exactly. But anyway, the inspiration for all of that, and then eventually, Mark and through your support, we built co-created a software that eventually powers reputation scores for other customers, and it was pretty fascinating to see how the two teams co-created something and took it to market. I think that's kind of going into the future, not just the Microsoft OpenAI partnership, but all the vertical companies working closely with AI companies and transforming the data and AI to assets.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot
Yep.
for joining us, and hopefully you'll be able to spend some more time with our audience. I know you have a very tight schedule, but Andy is local, so I know we'll be here next year, almost around the same time. So we'd love to have you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sri. Okay. Thank you.